Have you ever stopped to consider whether your eyes are really giving you the full story? You might be confident that seeing is believing, but in truth, seeing isn't always believing. Optical illusions and visual tricks prove that our brains can be fooled, and what we think we see is really the brain's best guess. So in this video, we're asking a bold question: why can't your brain trust your eyes? On screen, you might see a spiral moving, or a dot turning green, or even a gorilla casually strolling by basketball players, but those experiences can be deceiving. Check out this pattern. It might look like it's rotating, but it's actually a static image. Wild, right? Wait, what? Yes, you just saw motion where there was none. This one doesn't rely on physics or shaky hands, it's purely a brain trick. Our perception is already being tested. Throughout this video, we'll show you classic illusions and explain the science behind them. You'll see how your visual system is more like an active interpreter than a perfect recorder, constantly editing reality. By the end, you might think twice before trusting your eyes completely. First, a quick primer on how vision works. When light hits your eyes, it forms an inverted image on the retina, the light-sensitive screen at the back of your eye. Your retina's millions of receptors, rods, and cones convert that into electrical signals. These signals travel through the optic nerve to the brain's visual cortex. Think of the retina like a camera sensor and the brain like editing software that assembles the final picture. For example, each of your eyes provides a slightly different image of the world since they're a few inches apart on your face. Your brain uses these differences to judge depth and distance, a process called stereoscopic vision. That's why 3D movies work. Each eye sees a slightly different view, and the brain fuses them into a single 3D scene. Your eyes also automatically adapt in other ways. The lens inside each eye changes shape to focus on near or far objects, and the iris adjusts how much light enters. These features usually make life easier, but clever illusions or lighting tricks can fool your focus and brightness settings. For example, a strange shadow or glare can make two identical colors look completely different, because your brain corrects for the assumed lighting. Even before signals leave your eyes, some processing has already started. Specialized cells in the retina compare neighboring inputs to detect edges and motion. Your three types of color receptors begin the job of color detection, but the brain later recombines them. In effect, the image reaching your brain is not a raw photograph but an already interpreted version of reality. That leaves lots of room for clever patterns to trick the system. For instance, there's a literal blind spot in each eye where the optic nerve connects, a spot with no photoreceptors. You normally don't notice it, because your brain just fills in the missing part with surrounding colors and patterns. Your vision feels seamless, even though part of the picture is gone. This is an early clue. Your brain is willing to trust its own model over some raw data. Wild, right? So, your brain often doesn't trust your eyes exactly, it interprets their data. Now let's see how this can lead to mind-bending illusions. You might have heard the term optical illusion. Technically, an optical illusion is caused by the physics of light or the eye itself, like a mirage or floaters in your eye. But most of the illusions we mean are really visual illusions. They happen in the brain's interpretation of what the eyes see. Instead of saying don't trust your eyes, it's more accurate to say don't always trust your visual system. The eyes capture patterns of light, but the brain interprets them. When an illusion tricks you, it's usually because of the brain's processing. Let's look at some categories. Physical, optical illusions. These are rare, like seeing stars after a headache or a straw looking bent in water refraction. Physiological illusions, caused by the eye or brain's physical response, like afterimages or visual phosphenes. Cognitive, perceptual illusions, caused by the brain's interpretation. Most famous illusions fall here: colors, motion, context, etc. Keep in mind, an illusion in this video means your perception doesn't match objective reality. Got it? Let's see some in action. Imagine this: a circle of pinkish-purple dots arranged in a ring, all but one of them disappearing in sequence. If you stare at the center of that pattern, you might eventually see a moving green dot chasing around the circle, even though no green dot is ever there. This is the famous Lilac Chaser illusion. What's happening is two tricks at once. The blinking magenta dot taps into motion perception, called the phi phenomenon. Our brain perceives movement when objects flash in sequence and color afterimages. Your green channel fires after staring at magenta. Wait, there's no green dot, it's all in your brain. This shows how combining visual effects can fool us. Here's another, the checker shadow illusion by Edward Adelson. You see a checkered board with a cylinder casting a shadow. Two squares, A in light and B in shadow, look different shades. A seems darker, B lighter. But if you isolate their colors, they're actually the same gray. Your brain is interpreting brightness based on context. It knows shadows should make things darker and full light makes things brighter, so it brightens the shadow square and darkens the lit square in your perception. Mind blown, right? Your brain adjusted for lighting without you realizing. It corrected too much, and that's the illusion. Another example, imagine two identical lines with arrowheads. One has arrowheads pointing outward, the other inward. The one with outward arrows looks longer. This is the Muller-Lyer illusion. Your brain interprets the arrows as depth cues. One line looks like a corner jutting out at you, the other like an inner corner, so it judges one as farther than the other. That depth cue fools distance judgment and makes one line appear longer than the other, even though they're equal. Hold on, so our brain tricked us again through perspective cues. The hidden 13/14 billboard illusion is a neat real-world example. A sign showed there are 14 inches in a foot, but people read it as there are B inches. The 13 looked like a B. Many drivers failed to notice because our brains automatically assumed a counting pattern 13/14 and corrected the anomaly. The raw visual data 13/14 didn't match the expected 13/14 with no error, so the brain filled it in. These examples highlight how context and expectation shape vision. Our brains often prefer familiar patterns and fill in gaps. The effects above used edges and shapes. Now let's see how brightness and grids mislead us. Our brains love to see simple shapes and contrasts. For example, those familiar Pac-Man shapes can create a hidden triangle. Look at three black Pac-Man circles pointing inward, arranged in a triangle. You'll instantly see a bright white triangle overlapping them, even though no triangle is actually drawn. This is the Kanissa triangle illusion, a classic closure effect. Your mind fills in edges and boundaries that aren't there, because it prefers to see complete shapes. It's like your brain thought, triangle, and drew it in. We also exaggerate edges to detect borders. If you view a smooth gradient from dark to light, you often see extra light and dark bands at the transition. These are called mock bands. No actual stripes exist in the gradient, they appear due to retinal processing. Bright regions excite certain retinal cells, which then inhibit their neighbors. This contrast enhancement makes the edge look exaggerated. Essentially, your visual system sharpens borders by boosting contrast, and sometimes it overshoots, creating fake bright or dark bands that aren't really there. A similar effect is the Hermann grid illusion. With a black grid on a white background, you perceive gray blobs at the white intersections, but those spots vanish when you look directly at them. This happens in the retina. Each intersection is surrounded by more white area, so the neuron at that point gets a different pattern of inhibition, making it look darker. Move your eyes, and the gray spots disappear. These examples show that sometimes the illusion is happening right in our eyes and early visual processing. Lateral inhibition and edge detection normally help us see clearly by enhancing contrast, but with the right patterns they produce surprising artifacts. Even small quirks in our retinal wiring can lead to powerful perceptual surprises. Ever stare at a bright color, then look away and see a ghostly flash of the complementary color? If you stare at a green dot for a while and then look at a white wall, you'll briefly see a magenta dot instead. This is an Afterimage. There was no magenta in the scene. The green sensitive cones in your retina got tired, and when you looked away, the less fatigued cells red plus blue equals magenta dominated. It's as if your retina said no more green, so you briefly see greens opposite. Afterimages remind us that our eyes themselves have quirks, they adapt quickly. Likewise, after a hit to the head or in a dark movie theater, you might see spots or stars. That's also a kind of physiological illusion. Mechanical, where intense stimulation activates retinal cells in odd ways. We mentioned blind spots earlier. Each eye has a small blind spot about the size of your fingertip at arm's length where the optic nerve exits. You usually don't notice it, because your brain fills in that gap using surrounding colors and patterns. A classic demo: draw two small dots and stare at one. The other disappears when it lands on your blind spot. Yet you rarely see a blank, your brain just smooths over it. So again, your brain isn't trusting the raw data fully, it's trusting its own model. Speaking of motion, let's talk about something called the rotating snakes illusion. It's an image of colored circle snakes in a ring. When you look at it, or even just a part of it, it seems to rotate or swirl even though it's completely still. How is that possible? The trick here is tiny eye movements. When you hold your gaze, your eyes still jitter microscopically. The color gradients in the pattern bright to dark exploit this. Each tiny saccade causes a bit of lag in visual processing at different points, and your brain interprets that as motion. Stop right there, you might say. Why would my eyes move if I'm trying to stare still? Even when you think you're fixating, your eyes make involuntary microsaccades. Cover parts of the image and focus on the center, and the motion often disappears, proving it's about eye movement plus brain response, not real motion. Motion illusions like this show how our brain interprets sequences of signals as movement when certain conditions are met. It turned a static color arrangement into a dynamic scene in your mind. Imagine this principle in everyday entertainment. Movies are built on it. A film running at 24 frames per second is really just a series of still images, but your brain perceives it as smooth motion thanks to the phi phenomenon. Any quick slideshow or flipbook can look like real movement. Consider the ambiguous spinning dancer illusion, a silhouette of a twirling dancer. Some people see her spinning clockwise, others counterclockwise. Try focusing, and it may eventually flip, but then it's hard to flip back. Because the silhouette has no depth cues, your brain picks one direction and sticks with it. It's as if your mind decides, she's spinning this way, and ignores the opposite possibility until something like a gentle pressure on the eye makes it switch. This shows how motion perception can lock onto one of two equally valid interpretations of a scene. In summary, motion is another dimension where perception tricks abound. From movies to simple flashing lights, the brain's interpretation bridges the gaps and creates continuity, sometimes in ways that can be easily fooled. Our brain loves familiar shapes and patterns, and sometimes we'll see them even when they're not there. For example, look at this famous ambiguous image Rubens vase. Do you see two faces in profile, or a single vase? You can switch back and forth, but not see both at the same time. The lines are the same, the interpretation changes. Another fun example, the Necker cube is a simple 2D line drawing of a cube. You can see it with one face in front or the other face in front, and your perception may flip back and forth. The drawing never changes, but your brain chooses different 3D arrangements. The image is fixed, but your mind switches its story. It's not exactly lying, but it shows there's more than one way to interpret a visual. Faces are special to us, too. In the Thatcher illusion, an upside-down portrait has eyes and a mouth flipped right side up. It looks relatively normal when upside down, but when you flip it right side up it looks grotesque. This happens because our face recognition system doesn't process upside-down faces well. It only notices the distortion when the face is the correct way up. It highlights that some perception tricks only become obvious once the brain fully engages the right recognition mode. Now, a different twist. Not all illusions are about fancy images. Sometimes you just don't notice what's right in front of you. This is called inattentional blindness. The classic example is the invisible gorilla experiment. People watch a video of basketball players and count passes. They become so focused on counting that they completely miss a person in a gorilla suit strolling across the scene. Astonishingly, many viewers answer in surprise what gorilla, even though it was there the whole time. Their eyes even registered the gorilla, but their brain filtered it out because it wasn't expecting it. Likewise, change blindness shows how much we miss. If two images flicker with only a small change like a person swapping places, or a sign switching, people often don't notice until their attention is drawn. Even in film editing, directors exploit this. Continuity errors like a mug changing color between shots usually go unnoticed by casual viewers. The brain doesn't compare every detail of the scene unless forced. It focuses on the big picture or the task at hand, letting other things slip. These tricks show that attention is a bottleneck. Your eyes take in the whole world, but your brain can only process so much at once. What you don't see can be just as revealing as what you do see. All these examples highlight a powerful idea. Your brain is a prediction machine. It doesn't passively record images, it actively predicts what it expects to see based on context and past experience. The brain takes incoming sensory input, compares it to these expectations, predictions, and then tells a story about what's in front of you. Most of the time this is great, it saves time and energy and helps us navigate the world. But it also means perception is partly a construction. Your brain constantly updates its model. For example, if you look at a hidden or ambiguous pattern, your brain might guess the missing parts. The illusions we've seen exploit exactly this. When data is ambiguous or limited, the brain's guess can dominate. It's a bit like an overzealous autocorrect in your mind's visual processor, sometimes rewriting reality in unexpected ways. So, what does this mean for reality? If your brain is constantly editing what you see, are you ever seeing the world as it really is? Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Plato's cave suggested we only see shadows of the real world. Descartes wondered if an evil demon could be tricking all our senses. Science now gives us a modern perspective. Yes, perception is a construction. The world as you see it is a model built by your brain, not a direct photo. That's why a little humility is in order. Our senses usually do a fantastic job, but these illusions remind us they can be wrong. It also ties into cognitive biases. We often see what we expect or want to see. Learning about these visual illusions is a training ground for realizing that all our perceptions and beliefs can be biased. It's like testing your eyes with a test pattern. Knowing it helps you notice the flaws. Before we wrap up, consider some real-world examples of illusions. Artists and designers often exploit these tricks. Street painters draw amazing 3D holes or objects on flat pavement, making you feel like you could fall into a painted crack. Architects and filmmakers use forced perspective to change how big or small things appear. Even old painters of cathedrals created ceiling frescoes that look like open skies with columns, all illusions. In nature, optical phenomena abound. Desert mirages make you see pools of water on the road on a hot day. Rainbows and halos around the sun or moon are caused by light bending through raindrops or ice crystals. There's even a moon illusion. The moon looks enormous near the horizon, but when you measure it with your fingers it's the same size as overhead. Context tricks the eye into perceiving it bigger against foreground objects. Everyday perception can fool us too. In the Ebbinghaus illusion, two circles of identical size appear different if one is surrounded by large circles and the other by small ones. Your brain judges size by comparison. And faces again. Try the Thatcher illusion. Flip a photo of someone's face upside down and twist the eyes and mouth. It looks almost normal until you flip it right side up, then it looks grotesque. That's because upright faces trigger our holistic face processor. Upside down faces don't, so the brain overlooks the distortions at first. And remember those magic eye pictures. Those random dot images hide a 3D scene if you relax your eyes. At first they look like meaningless static, but once you train your focus, the hidden 3D image pops out. If you thought they were nonsense, it just meant your brain needed practice to align the two eyes for depth. So get ready to be surprised. Optical tricks are all around you in art, nature, and daily life. The more you know about these tricks, the more you'll notice them, and the sharper your brain becomes at understanding its own game. Even modern technology shows these ideas at work. Computer vision systems and neural networks can be fooled by images too. Researchers feed weird patterns to algorithms and watch them hallucinate objects that aren't there, revealing that even AI can have its own illusions. So, can you trust what you see, not blindly? Your eyes capture data, but your brain interprets it with biases and shortcuts. Many optical illusions are actually brain tricks, visual illusions that reveal how perception can mislead. Examples like the Lilac Chaser, Checker Shadow, and the Invisible Gorilla show that seeing isn't always believing. Your brain can deceive you, but the good news? Once you understand these tricks, you can spot them. The next time you see an impossible shape or an unexpected color, remember, it's your brain, not some magic. These illusions are not just party tricks, they're clues to how your mind works. By exposing where perception can go wrong, we learn to think more critically about everything we see and believe. Thanks for watching. If this blew your mind even a little, hit like and consider subscribing to Philosora for more explorations of perception, cognition, and philosophy. Comment below with your favorite illusion or any question about how your mind works. Now go test some illusions for yourself, maybe stare at a color and look away, or find your blind spot. Enjoy unlocking the hidden rules of your mind.